Hello, I'm very glad to be here with you, and I will be sharing a PowerPoint today on what it takes to become a caregiver and an administrator. And this is something that I've had quite a bit of experience with, 25 years as a caregiver and the last 5 as an administrator. So I am going to work at connecting my PowerPoint. Please be patient as I might run into a couple of blips. Thank you. All right, we are ready to begin, so hopefully this will work. I am quite challenged by it. As you can see, we are going to start with becoming a caregiver, and I'd like to say that each person is able to learn to do this. And it is one of those things that we can learn as we're growing as children and into adulthood. So my first experience with being a caregiver was taking care of my friend's mom. She had Alzheimer's, and I took care of her for 8.5 years. The next person that I was involved with was my grandmother, my Nana, and she had suffered from a stroke and could no longer live on her own. The next person was my dad, who had multiple issues of mostly physical problems that he had acquired over the years. So he needed a lot of care. Then there was my mom, and she also suffered from many strokes. And then my last person is my brother, who had Down syndrome, and I spent time taking care of him and my mom and my dad all at the same time, while also raising 2 kids and teaching a full-time schedule and being an administrator in a private Christian school. So those were my experiences as being a caregiver, and my husband was very supportive. And then, as you can see, we moved into taking care of people we didn't know or strangers in a different kind of a setting within the last 5 years. Now, who can be a caregiver? Basically, a caregiver is anyone who's over 18, has very little experience other than maybe taking care of a grandma or a grandpa or a family member. They need to also get their fingerprints and their background checked by the state, at least that is in California. I think a very important part is also to be compassionate and a team player. Those are things that come with a person. It's not necessarily something that you can learn unless your mom and dad taught you those things. So qualities matter. And another thing that a person becoming a caregiver needs is first aid and CPR, because that's the type of job that really requires those skills. So if you were to become an administrator, this would involve uh, being a supervisor or an owner of a facility, whether it's a large facility or a small facility. It requires training by the state, by approved vendors, and depending on what facility you're working with. I worked in a RCFE, it required 40 hours. Also, we need clear fingerprints, and some educational skills would be helpful. Anyone can apply for this type of a job. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of them as we move through this slide presentation. Where are caregivers needed? Caregivers are needed in a skilled nursing facility, which you can see on the slide is a larger type facility. Sometimes they're called SNFs, and they have a variety of things that they provide for the resident or the patient. Some of the things they have are medical issues. So the persons working in these facilities need to have some kind of a medical license or certificate. Like, for example, a CNA, an RN, or an LVN. You'll find various levels of care that are needed here in this type of facility. Also, you might need skills to help with the physical and mental limits in a patient. And the people that are involved here, the caregivers and the licensed certificated people, do a lot of work, and they spend their shifts taking care of people in a variety of situations. Now, the second type of home is what we call an assisted living home. And this is where residents need help with their daily skills, such as showering, dressing, sometimes eating. They cannot feed themselves if they have dementia or physical issues that don't allow them to feed themselves. Some of them also might require medical care, and that medical care can vary from injections, diabetics, people that are on oxygen, or maybe they have different kinds of gastrointestinal issues. So there's a variety of things, but they require some medical care, like the assisted living, the skilled nursing, which they're a little bit different in that this is more of a home, and they have less medical issues, but they do have some also. And these can be large homes, and just like a skilled nursing is usually a large facility, over 25 people. And as you can see in this slide, caregivers sometimes have to assist the patients to walk, to get the kind of exercise they need, and also help them with their daily living activities. Now, the third type of facility is a residential home, which you may have seen in your own neighborhood. This is what we call a board and care, because the person lives there and receives 24-hour care. Now, in my situation, we purchased a 6-bed, and a 6-bed is a board and care that's in your local neighborhood. It is limited for 6 residents, and they're called residents. They're not called patients or clients, because that's where they live. And it is generally paid by private funds coming from the family or savings accounts. Sometimes 6-beds are supplemented by government subsidies. These residents also need 24/7 care. So we provide that around the clock to these people. They might need rotating in the night shift, or maybe they need assistance eating food. But many of these people are not uh, highly needing medical attention. So we do not have medical staff for a 6-bed, but we can have it, but it is not required. Another name for the 6-bed is called an RCFE. And what that is a residential care for the elderly. And in the state of California, one of the things that is identified is that this is a non-medical home. And they emphasize the non-medical because we are not required to have certificated caregivers. So caregivers can work in all of these facilities, whether it's the skilled nursing facility, the assisted living facility, or the residential care facility. And I see there's a question here, which I'd like to take time to answer. And one of them is, what's the difference in pay in these different kinds of facilities? And there is a significant difference. As you can imagine, in an RCFE, the amount paid for a caregiver is normally minimum wage. And that is something that goes along with the level of experience. Now, if you have somebody who's experienced in caregiving, you might pay them more. And you certainly will pay them overtime. In the state of California, we pay either $9 an hour or we pay $13.50 an hour, and that will go up soon in January. Now, if you're in a skilled nursing facility or an assisted living facility, you can also be a caregiver, and the pay will probably be increased. And the main reason is because you will do a lot more work in a skilled or a nursing facility because you have a bigger caseload. The advantage of an RCFE is that the ratio ranges from 1:3 or 1:6, depending on how many staff are caring at the time for the residents. But in a skilled facility, they have a ratio of 1:13 or 15, and those caregivers or CNAs spend most of their shift changing their patients and either feeding them or rotating them. So it's work intensive, which is very different in an RCFE. So we'll go on to the next slide, and if there's any more questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Okay, you might wonder, who can live in a residential care facility? Anybody can live in them. And you might be an independent lady or an independent gentleman. And sometimes in an RCFE, you can take off for a few days, which you can also do that in an assisted living where they have more of independent care. You can take off and come back when you want. So anybody can live in these facilities. And these pictures happen to show the background of the facility, and you can see that it's a little bit homey there. Okay, and there are many activities that you'd be involved with, whether it would be having a celebration like at Christmas time, or maybe you'll be playing checkers or bingo. There's a lot of things to be doing with your your residents and caregivers. It's very important that the caregiver is available to supervise the resident. Sometimes you might have an electronic device that would be available if the resident is able to use that. So being a caregiver, I'd like to just conclude this is available in a skilled nursing facility, a large senior living home, or assisted living, or in a 6-bed. Now, and these are just a few of the locations that you might be a caregiver, or maybe you will be a caregiver in your own home, like we did when we cared for our family members. But it is an occupation that is very fulfilling, especially if you are a person that enjoys caring for people and loving them and being compassionate. And I would highly recommend this type of job for anyone who thinks they might be interested in caring for other people. And I would like to go back and stop sharing right now and just talk to you a few minutes about my experience. Like I was saying before, I started out as a caregiver in a friend's home and took care of his mom, and she had Alzheimer's, and that was a very debilitating disease, although she lived a lot longer since she was getting one-on-one care, and it was, you know, it was a loving environment, and that is a significant type of quality to share with people that cannot take care of themselves. I would like to say that it was a definite learning experience for me, and doing it for 25 years, I got a view of many different types of care that was needed, whether it be talking with the person or just helping them to be mentally stimulated, because when they have a debilitating disease like dementia, you can stimulate their brain to function a little bit more actively as long as you're trying simple tasks for them. But on the other hand, if you are a caregiver for somebody who's very clear-headed and has physical problems, you might be doing a variety of things that you would never do for the dementia person. Like, for example, taking them to the dentist or taking them out to get ice cream. It varies depending on what their level of need is. And so I've seen a wide range of different kinds of things. And I'll tell you, caregiving is a very satisfying type of job. And I know my staff really enjoy being with the seniors. We happen to be a senior home, and you can have boarded cares that are for children, are for teenagers, are for adults. I mentioned my brother that I took care of, and he had Down syndrome, and he lived with us for 5 years, and he had his own mental challenges, but he's also very independent in the sense that he knew what he wanted and he let you know what he wanted. So we had a lot of fun with John. And then in the last 5 years, we purchased our own small 6-bed and have learned what it meant to be in administration and actually running the home from the other end. It's very different from being a caregiver. And so I'd like to say that both positions have been giving me a lot of learning curve, and I would like to thank the good Lord for stretching me in many different ways in both types of settings. It's been a challenging and satisfying journey, caregiving as well as administrating. So I hope this has helped you in getting a clear picture on becoming a caregiver in your own home, uh, getting paid as a caregiver, or even becoming an administrator and running your own home. Thank you for being here with me today, and we'll see you again.